I've come to terms with the fact that video games are not the strongest form of storytelling. Cinema and literature just have so many advantages in how they communicate narratives that just don't work when you're in control. This is the case for almost every sort of game, but one area they especially struggle with is the detective genre. A good detective movie makes the protagonist look like a detective, but a good detective game should make the player feel like a detective. This isn't easy considering the technological limitations of the medium, although we've definitely seen some titles with innovative ideas. Considering the genre's inconsistent track record, Backbone wasn't set up for success. Surprisingly, it does tend to overcome adversity, but it also has many shortcomings that exist beyond the realm of the genre. Backbone isn't exceptionally original, and this attribute is perhaps reflected most in the art style. While gorgeous, the artistic revival of the 16-bit era is a quite common theme throughout indie games. What does make the style feel somewhat unique is the level of detail and how it is utilized to create gorgeous environments. From the urban setting of Granville to the rundown houses and shops of West End, it's clear that much effort was put into creating Backbone's segmented world. The level of proficiency in the art direction can also be found in the characters that inhabit these locations. NPCs are lively and animated, capable of expressing human emotions. The art team also could have easily made every citizen of the world one type of creature to make designing them easier, but instead we see a host of different animals. There's a scientist fox, a bear that works as a bouncer, a policeman dog. Out of this wacky cast of characters, you play as Howard Loader, a private investigator raccoon. He's originally appointed to look into the constant disappearances of a woman's husband, as she thinks he is cheating, only to find out that her husband has been killed. So, Howard starts tracking the case of his murder instead. It's a strong setup that leads into a rather captivating story, accented with motifs of corruption, abuse, and poverty. The game is dark in terms of the topics being handled, but its M rating is more so earned for the dialogue. It's ostentatious, edgy for the sake of being edgy, and Howard has a childlike understanding of swear words. Or, depending on how you approach conversations, he has a childlike interpretation of how to show affection. Either way, there's no morality system, you can't get a game over from saying something wrong, and there's only one ending, so your choices in conversation ultimately amount to nothing. The real issue though is the presentation of the dialogue. It would be jarring and unlikely for there to be fully voice-acted conversations in a game like this, but sound effects could at least help to create a better sense of immersion. Also, having letters load in real time, rather than entire paragraphs appearing at once, could contribute a great deal. Sadly, these oversights end up doing damage to other aspects of the game. It's a pity, because Backbone is fairly competent for its place in the detective genre. The civilians of the towns and cities are mostly red herrings, but the ability to talk to and get information from them undercuts what could be a lurking sense of linearity. It's pretty clear though which ones are just distractions when once you say goodbye to them, you run out of dialogue options. There's also no penalty for not paying attention to dialogue because there are objectives to follow. This is to an extent a double-edged sword. While you don't have to analyze long conversations to progress, those text walls do contain some genuine emotion and interesting information from time to time, but they get lost in the surplus of unnecessary exposition and sarcastic comments. Still, there are other tense and emotional moments that will captivate you, emphasized by a shift in music or a cutscene, and it's no coincidence that these are the vital story beats. They communicate an interpretable and engaging narrative, making you want to hear out what characters have to say. That's when the story is at its utmost peak, more specifically towards the end of the second act, and it still keeps you hooked through most of the third act. But then, something goes horribly wrong. For whatever reason, the game shifts its identity. The original story, which still hasn't come to fruition, is tossed to the side, and it morphs into a pretentious, existentialist piece of garbage. Almost nothing good about this game is present in the last quarter, it's just a drag to an extremely underwhelming ending. It tries to subvert the norm of fiction ending with a climax because in real life, it's never that simple. However, from a player's perspective, it ends up looking like the developers got distracted and decided to tell an entirely different story. One last thought. Intertwined with the story beats and dialogue, there's sections with stealth, puzzle solving, and some pseudo-platforming. Although nothing groundbreaking on their own, these occasional segments got me thinking about the potential this game had. If the developers were to fine-tune these elements and use them more often, in conjunction with better user interface, a more consistent narrative, and the stunning backdrops as they are, this game could be incredible. But while I enjoyed Backbone for what I got out of it, it definitely feels like wasted potential.